Hi, everybody, and welcome back to EBNet Stream. I'm very excited today to welcome our guest on the channel, Advocate Brett Ladouce, who is an author of a very well-known book called Pensions for Palookas. And we recently held a webinar on inclusive financial planning, where lots of the questions were around the need for financial education and financial literacy in the average South African household. And so I thought I'd catch up with Brett and he could share some of the lessons that he's learned in writing this book and some of his experiences as he hosts pensioners or people approaching retirement and deals with their retirement issues that they may have forefront in their minds. Welcome to EBNet Stream, Brett.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to have this chat.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to it. I want to start with a question around your book, which I've got here and I use every single day, and more around your intentions or your inspiration on writing the book. What gap in retirement planning knowledge were you aiming to address when you put this book together?
When I started writing the book around about 2020, I had about 25 years experience in the financial services industry, most of them on the employee benefits pension funds side of the industry. And what I found is that there were not a lot of easy to read books that would assist your average fund member to get a basic understanding of the benefits of belonging to a pension or provident fund. And when COVID hit, I had the opportunity to now do this as a pet project with my then 15-year-old son, who did all the sketches and the artwork in the book. So, and the idea was to have an easy to read book where all the legalese and all the industry jargon was removed, so that your average fund member could understand why they actually need to belong to a fund, why they need to contribute to a fund, what are the benefits of the fund, and what happens at certain interventions, for example, when they get divorced or they resign, or ultimately when they retire from the fund, to give them that basic education to help them to make informed financial decisions in regard to their retirement savings. So I think that is where the idea came from. And at that stage, most of the books in the industry were 400, 500-page books written on a master's level or CFP level for most people. And I think that there was a big need, because I think we've got about 9 million active fund members, and not all of them are on that level. And I saw the need in the market for an easy to read book that will educate the average fund member.
I have to give credit where credit's due. You've written the book in such accessible language, and you really make it approachable for the average South African and the average retirement fund member when you emphasize asking stupid questions that people are too afraid to ask in their retirement funds. So what, in your experience, as a senior legal advisor within the industry, as well as in your interactions with these upcoming retirees, what are some of the stupid questions or the more critical questions that you find people are asking you, and if they're not asking you, what they should be asking of their fund advisors or fund trustees?
I think if I look at retirement planning, I call it the RECAS system: retirement education, counseling, and advice service. So everything starts with an understanding with retirement education, and that's where my book, Pensions for Palookas, can play a role. So that all fund members firstly have a basic understanding of why they are in a pension fund, what are the benefits. So a broad understanding of the issues of dealing with your pension or provident fund. Secondly, they need to understand their own fund and their own fund rules, and that is where the fund plays an important role with a benefit counseling service, so that fund members do not only understand the broad issues of pensions and provident funds, but they also understand what are my rights and obligations in terms of the rules of my fund that I belong to. And I think the third and also very important component is then a financial advisor that understands the fund rules and that can guide members to make decisions that can lead to to better retirement outcomes. So I think if you talk about stupid questions, I think people, because they are not they didn't get the education part and they didn't get the counseling part, then they feel stupid when they sit with their financial advisors and say, okay, now I don't know what the hell's going on. And I always say, when I have these seminars with groups that are close to retirement, I do my Let's Talk Retirement breakfasts. And what I normally say is that you, as a fund member, it's your money. You must take control of your retirement. And you are the driver of your retirement, and your financial advisor is your navigator. So you must understand your fund. You must understand what your retirement goals are. And your advisor will guide you and give you the route to get to that retirement destination. And I think once members take responsibility for their own best retirement outcomes, they will know what role they have to play and what their obligations are to ensure that, and what the role of the financial advisor is. And I think then you'll have less stupid questions, because I know where I'm going. I've educated myself, and I have received the information from my benefit counseling service. So when I sit down with my financial advisor, I know what my retirement destination is, and we can sit down and we can work out the plan, and we can work out the best route to get to those retirement outcomes that I want to achieve.
Sure. And often the devil is in the detail, and like you say, there is no stupid question. And one of the aspects that really comes through in your book is how is like you've just said, is understanding how your retirement fund works and how it works in conjunction with any other type of, let's call them retail products that you might have. So in your opinion, and kind of sitting on the forefront of both retirement funds and benefit counseling, what is the most misunderstood aspect of retirement funds that you see amongst South African savers?
I think if we go historically, we come from an environment 20, 30 years ago where we had mostly defined benefit funds, where your employer took the financial risk and the investment risk. And if I belong to such a fund, I must just see that I contribute. I don't have to look at the investments. I don't have to look at the risk of those investments. I just know that when I retire in 20 or 30 years from now, a defined benefit will be paid out to me. So I never had to actively be involved in my fund. But when we started switching over to defined contribution funds, where the investment risk and the risk of not achieving, or let's say the responsibility of achieving my preferred retirement outcomes is now on me as a member, a lot of members are still sitting back and having a passive attitude and saying, okay, I'll just put the money in the fund, and the trustees of the fund must decide where this money must be invested. So I'm not playing an active role in the investment side, and looking at, as I say, talking to my financial advisor to see what is the best route for me to get to my outcomes. So I think a lot of members don't know what they don't have a retirement goal. So if you don't have a goal, you can't have a plan to get to that goal. And I think that is one of the big risks that I've identified, that people say, okay, I'll just put money in, and whatever happens, and in 20, 30 years from now, I'll see how much money I have. But in the meantime, I'm not doing anything to actively ensure that I get to my retirement destination.
It's such a good analogy, this concept of having a destination that you're trying to get to. And I certainly agree with you. In my experience, the average member of a retirement fund thinks that the trustee is driving the bus, and he in fact is driving the bus, or she is driving the bus to get to that ultimate outcome. And so I do, in my experience, I share your views around that. And so it's interesting. And I guess some of the other concepts or struggles, let's call them that the average South African might have when it comes to money may have systemic or cultural origins. And I'd be interested in your view on this. Do you believe that there are systemic or cultural issues that affect financial planning? And how does your book seek to address those?
I think as I said, historically, we were in an environment where we had your defined benefit funds, and you now working with your defined contribution funds, where it's the responsibility to ensure the retirement outcomes is now on the individual. And I think the cultural shift is towards that I must take control of that. As you said earlier, your trustees are responsible for putting a structure in place that can lead to the best retirement outcomes for all members. But remember, they're looking at, if you look at your umbrella fund environment, 100,000, 200, 300,000 members. So the trustees can't have tailor-made plans for 300,000 individuals. They do their best to put structures in place that they can accommodate most, but they won't be able to accommodate my personal goals, my personal feelings, my preferences. And I think a lot of those things, and one of the cultural things is that as South Africans, money is one of the things we don't talk about.
Mm.
And we struggle, our parents struggle to speak to us about money. It's something that we had to go and figure out. And now, if you look at where we are with a financial services industry, it's very complex. And that is a gift and a curse. On the one hand, you need the protection, so you need the regulation and the stringent regulations that we have to ensure that the money that we save for retirement, that is protected. But at the same time, your average fund member is now totally confused as into how do I operate in this very complex environment. We are not all financially savvy. We don't all have that financial background to make these decisions. And I think that is where it comes in, where again financial education plays a vital role, and where my book comes in. And as I said, my goal was to give the average member in about 160 pages a basic idea of what is going on in your pension or provident fund. But it shouldn't stop there. I think we all have an obligation to further educate ourselves and to go out and to read articles, and a lot of funds provide a lot of useful information and interactive sessions with their members, where members have the opportunity, and I would really recommend to members, if your fund has any of these interactive sessions where you've got investment specialists or risk specialists coming to you for free and giving you advice, or at least giving you the information on what is going on in your fund, what are your investment options in that fund, the onus is on you to actually listen and to ask the questions, whether you think they are dumb questions or not, but the questions that can guide you into making better and more informed financial decisions in regard to your retirement savings.
And I love that concept around demystifying or de-jargonizing quite a complex environment that we as an industry rather proud ourselves on, of being these super clever people who use these big words. But the reality is that everybody deals with money, right? And so everybody needs to have a basic understanding. And your book definitely unpacks lots and lots of the technical terms without giving advice. And so it really is a how-to guide in my mind, a how to understand your retirement fund, except you use the words pensions for Palookas. So I'm going to step into the realm of advice, if I may, for a moment, and ask you what could possibly be a generational question, and just linking back to that defined contribution, defined benefit, crossover in the past. But if you had a child or a friend's child or a colleague who was just starting to work right now, what 3 tips would you give them to be able to retire comfortably from a financial point of view?
Yeah, I think in this new environment, and then obviously September of 2024, we also had the implementation of the two-pot system, where if you start working now, if I'm a new employee and I start on the 1st of June at a company, and I decide to make a contribution, 2/3 will go towards retirement and 1/3 of that money will go into that savings pot. So from day one, these new employees are in that environment that they have immediate access to part of their retirement savings. So if I have to look at it, if I have to look back, I would say the first thing I would say to a new employee is, firstly, only spend 50% of your gross income on your lifestyle expenses. So if you're earning 10,000 Rand, budget that you can live off 5,000 Rand, the other 5,000 Rand is for tax and for savings. So that other 5,000 Rand, you either pay your tax with that, or and you put money into your retirement fund as well as into other savings products or investment products. So you're giving up some of your immediate wants to ensure that you've got future stability. The second thing I would do is, as far as your retirement fund is concerned, at least from the day that you work for the next 35 to 40 years, try and put away 25% of your gross income. As we know at the moment, there are certain benefits to that. Number one, it immediately reduces your immediate tax bill, because up to 27.5% or 350, limited to 350,000 Rand per year of your taxable income, you can get a tax deduction on the contributions that you make to your fund. So that money reduces your taxable income, which means that if you are at the lower end and you're paying 18% tax, that you're getting that 18% tax reduction. So if you look at it, 18 Rand of every 100 Rand that you save that you contribute to your pension fund is actually money that would have gone to tax. If you are in the 45% tax bracket, then it actually means that 45% that would have gone to tax, you're now rerouting, and it's your money. It's there for your benefit. So I would say put the money at least 25% of your gross income into your retirement fund. And that money is also, another benefit is that you get tax-free growth on that money while it's in the pension fund. So all your dividends you get, all the capital gains that you get, all the growth on that money that you put into that pension or provident fund, that will be tax-free as long as the money's in the fund. And while the money's in the fund, it's also protected against your creditors. Nobody can touch that money. And I think that is an important thing that a lot of people also don't understand, is that money, in terms of the Pension Funds Act, is protected against creditors. So so those are two of the important things I would say. And the third thing I would say is to have a plan in place. For a lot of people, age 25, retirement at 60 sounds a far, far, far away from where I am right now. But life starts to happen. One day you're 25, the next day you're 30, you're married, you've got 2 children, you've got school fees, you've got all those things. And if you haven't had the discipline in the past to save 25%, when all these other factors come into your life, it will become even more difficult, because if you don't have that discipline and you said, okay, this is part of my long-term plan that I'm going to put away 20% or 25% of my gross remuneration into my pension fund or for savings, it's going to be very hard. So for me, the third thing is have a long-term plan in place, but you must also be willing to give up your short-term wants. I'm not saying needs, your wants. Giving up some short-term wants that you want to spend money on right now, and to have the discipline to construct your retirement plan or your savings plan and to stick to it.
Great advice. And on that same tone, what might be slightly different or a different view is if you could go back and give your 25 or 20-year-old self, who's just leaving university, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with your law degree, what advice would you give yourself back, your future self, when it comes to preparing for your retirement?
Yeah. It's funny because if you look at the introduction of my book, I said, I actually took that view. What would I tell myself, or what are the things that I would have wanted to know when I started working? And that is one of the reasons why I wrote this book. What are the things that, if I knew what's in the book 25, 30 years ago when I started working, I would have made more informed choices around my pension fund. Um, Previously, I left a pension fund. Okay, I started my own business, but I took all my money out of my pension fund to fund the business. Um, Other people take all the money out to fund lifestyle expenses. And if I knew then what I know now, I would have spent less money on the things that I want in life, saved more money for retirement, and I would have had more discipline when it comes to retirement savings. I think those are the things. If I have to go back and I knew then what I know now, yeah, I think I would have definitely saved more for retirement.
When you write a book about encouraging your 21-year-olds to be disciplined, please let me know because I'll buy that one too.
No, no. Let's look. I just completed the second edition of this book, and what I want to do is to make it accessible to all South Africans. I'm actually looking at the moment for sponsors to translate the book into all the official languages in South Africa,
Nice.
so that people can because we take it for granted. We've got what 12 official languages now, and English is not everybody's first language. So I've done translations into one language. Preferably within the next year or two, I would like to bring it out in at least four or five other official languages in South Africa.
Lovely. And as you mentioned, focusing on the future, I'd want to wrap up our chat around how you see, I mean, you're an active, from your stories that you share, you're an active benefits counselor, you're involved in counseling and educating upcoming retirees. What are your views and opinions on what the future of financial education should look like to deal with some of the challenges we've discussed in our chat today?
Yeah, I think financial education, I think the pennies dropped in South Africa, the importance of that. If you go and look at the um, some of the discussion papers brought out by the FSCA around financial education,
Mm-hmm.
And the importance of it, and especially now in our our social media era that we are in, um, younger people have much more access to information, but it's not always information provided by subject experts.
Mm.
So it can happen that a lot of the information that is out there on retirement planning or on investment are actually not provided by people who are experts in those fields. And it becomes more difficult for the younger generation to go and sift through everything to say, okay, should I believe person A or influencer B? And I think that line between financial education, advice, and product promotion is getting blurred. So once we get to a point, and I think in future we'll have more, if not regulation, more guidelines as into what actually qualifies as financial education versus promotion of products or services, especially on social media. I think once we have that in place, people will then have a better idea of, is this actually an expert in financial planning, or is this an expert in retirement planning that I'm listening to? And is this information based on that expert knowledge that has been built up over the last 20 years? Or is this somebody that just has a certain view, like view on a certain product that is not backed up by either financial education or um, expertise that was built up over time? But what is good for me to see is that there is now suddenly a realization. And with the employers that I also work, where I do my Let's Talk Retirement breakfast seminars, employers are also getting involved and saying that we moved maybe to an environment that we don't have our own fund, we're part of an umbrella fund, but we still have an obligation to ensure that our employees do the right thing, get access to financial education to make informed retirement decisions. And for me, that is a good thing that I'm picking up that's happening in the market, that more and more employers are saying, we have an obligation to financially educate our employees, and that the fact that we are no longer managing our own fund, that we are now a participating employer in an umbrella fund, for example, that doesn't take away our responsibility to ensure those outcomes, or to ensure that our employees have the right financial education, have the right information from their funds to make informed decisions.
Definitely. I mean, the umbrella revolution is certainly well underway. And I think it's gone from a situation of members letting trustees ride the bus to trustees letting other trustees ride the bus. So it becomes more removed. And yet the need for education and the need for independent, like you say, independent and qualified education is becoming more and more important, as we've seen in the FSCA's recently produced conduct standard on financial education. So thank you for sharing your thoughts and your experiences and stories, and what inspired you to write this book. And I really appreciate the time you spent chatting to me this afternoon and to our listeners this afternoon. So thanks, Advocate Brett Ladouce, the author of Pensions for Palookas. If you are in the retirement fund industry in whatever capacity, I do recommend you read this book and use it as a resource, have it available on hand for when you are chatting to your members and to your clients. Thank you, Brett.
Yeah, and just to end off, if anybody's interested in buying the book, they can send an email to pensionsforpalookas@gmail.com, and I'll see to it that you get a book in your hands.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that kind offer. Keep well.
Okay, then. Keep well.